Welcome to Internally Guided Life, a podcast to help you unlock a life of balance, fulfillment, and joy. I'm Kayla Sweet, and together we are going to have fun and create change from the inside out. I'm so glad you're here. Hello, my friends. Welcome back. Today we are going to be digging into a topic that we just cannot escape from in our lives. It's something that is going to impact us or has impacted us or someone we love. It's unavoidable, but it's also really heavy and something that, depending on where you're at, the culture and the norms here in the US, I feel like we don't give it as much time, attention, care as we need to. And that is the topic of grief and how we can navigate grief. And while this is a really heavy and sometimes unbearable thing to experience, I think you will find that our guest today has a way of just breathing the light and the hope and the love into this topic, which is something that we can all stand to do better with as we navigate losses in life and mourn the people that we wish were still here, but also find a way to honor them and to live in honor of them. So today I have Marie Alessi joining us. She is a mother of two, a best-selling author, a TEDx speaker, a keynote speaker, and the founder of a global movement dedicated to changing the narrative around grief. And this is because she had her own personal experience with this. She's suffered many losses in her life, but the loss of her husband, Rob, to a sudden brain aneurysm really spurred her into this movement and this personal experience of reclaiming the light in a time of unimaginable darkness. So I am so excited to hear the things that she has to share, and we are going to just dig in. We're going to explore all of these unspoken layers of grief that we don't always give time and attention to, and really talk about how it can be this doorway that we can move through that allows some tenderness and some transformation within that space of pain and loss. So whether you're currently grieving or you've experienced this in your life or you're holding space for people who are grieving, I just know that this conversation is going to be a gift and a healing, and I'm so excited to share it. With that, Marie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I just want to pay you a compliment straight up, if that's okay.
Oh, of course.
I've never seen anyone or heard anyone string my bio together so nicely because usually you get asked for a bio up front at a podcast and people read it out. And what you have just done is to like really dig in straight away and pull things apart and bring things in. And I love that. I love your introduction, and I feel truly honored that you have done this for me and to have me here. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I think our initial conversation, it allows me to think of you as this full and rich and complex and beautiful soul that I had a wonderful conversation with. So that makes it
Oh,
so
thank
easy.
you. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. I'm so happy to be here and delve into this conversation with you.
Yeah, it's gonna be a powerful exploration. I know that already. I can feel it. It's coming. But before I get carried away and just all of the
Mm.
things I want to ask you and talk about, I want to give you space for a moment to share a little bit of who you are and what you do, and then we'll dig into your story and all of the exciting things with your movement as we go along. But I want to give you space to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much. I don't know if there's much left to say after your beautiful introduction, but I am a mama bear in shining armor, first and foremost. This is my absolute title of honor. I love being a mom, and I am also all the things that you shared. I'm an author, I'm a speaker, and I would wrap it all up in I'm a grief advocate. Everything I do in life is about bringing more lightness into grief, and I think it is really needed and so necessary. So, yeah, I can't wait to share a few things and delve into it.
Yeah, yeah, I love that advocate. That's a powerful word, and that's exactly what you do and your way of being. I feel that says from you, like when you speak about your work, you're really trying to bring that power into the world through this painful doorway.
I'll walk out of this interview an inch taller, I can tell you that.
Well, good, because I am already super excited. I've been jazzed up the last half an hour, just like ready to roll. So I
Exactly.
was,
We could have started earlier.
yeah, we could have, but this way I had to build anticipation.
Oh, beautiful.
So let's start with your story, your personal story, and how grief made its way into your life. Because I think this is so foundational to the work that you do, and it's such a touching and inspirational story as well. So we'll start there.
I would say I have. Yeah, that there is, we are already right into the topic here when I'm just trying to say this first sentence. It's so interesting because I used to always say I had some very significant losses in my life, but through the work that I do, I actually don't call it loss anymore, you know. So rather than saying my husband died or, you know, I lost my husband, well, he died, absolutely, but I actually now say my husband transitioned. So there is this whole
Mm.
thing around language that I actually do want to start with before I even share my story. But yes, I was 20 when my dad passed from cancer. And back then, I would have used exactly that word. I lost my dad. I had no idea how to grieve. I didn't know how to deal with loss, with death, with grief. Nobody teaches you that, in particular, not in schools. And thinking about the statistics, it's actually quite appalling and sad that we don't teach that at school. We don't, there's so many things we don't learn at school, but that's for another podcast. I just went through life not knowing how to handle that. And then fast forward about 13 years, I met my husband and got married. I moved to Australia. 10 months later, I met Rob. Another 10 months later, I married him. If anybody would have told me that up front, I would have gone, you're crazy. There's no way I'm going to marry a man I only just met a few months prior. But when I met Rob, it was this when you know moment. And we had our dream barefoot wedding on the beach. We had two beautiful boys, Flynn and Jed. They are now 17 and 15. So right into teenagerhood, like right in the last year of school. And we had the absolute dream life, you know, living so close to the beach and being madly in love still after 12 years of marriage. And one day, Rob went on a business trip and never made it home. So he basically passed away from a brain aneurysm, absolute instant, no pre-warning, nothing would have indicated what was to come, while he was 5 hours flights away from us. So that was the biggest and deepest and sharpest turning point in my life. And I can now say through everything that happened prior to this experience had actually prepared me for that moment, but I didn't know that in that moment. You know, hindsight is a 2020 vision. And so often we say nothing prepared me for what was to come. And then you turn around when you've done a certain amount of healing and you're like, oh, actually, look at all these little events or big events in my life. Everything has prepared me for this moment. But
Mm.
you don't feel that right there, right then. So yeah, I don't want to make this too big because there will be a lot more that we want to discuss. But from that moment on, I was faced with instant sole parent, two young kids. They were only 10 and 8 at the time. And Rob and I had this what if conversation about 3 years prior. I mean, again, you know, what are the chances that you have this conversation? Because not many people do. He drove past a fatal accident where a young dad had lost his life in a front-on car crash with a truck, and his daughter was only 16 months old. And when we heard about that, and he had to do the 2 hour detour because all the roads were blocked, we sat in our bed that night and we said, "What would you do if that would happen to me?" And vice versa. You know, it was a really deep conversation and tears involved. It was very confronting and also very bonding and beautiful and so full of love because the outcome of that conversation was, I would want you to create the happiest life possible for you and the boys. And we really, truly wish that for each other. And yet it was a theory conversation for us at that stage, you know. But love just wants you to be happy. That's always my main sentence. Love just wants you to be happy. And that became my North Star in my darkest hour when I received that phone call from the sergeant from the coroner's office telling me that my husband had deceased in a hotel room in Perth that morning. So that was the starting point to a whole new life for us. And yeah, I don't know if you want me to already go into what happened thereafter, or if you have any questions there, because yeah, that in itself was a huge story. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a powerful story, and I started to get choked up a little just hearing you talking about this conversation that you had and how like deeply rooted in love the two of you were, and the fact that you were able to have that conversation and know know each other's wishes before this incident happened. Like what a gift, what a blessing that that happened, that you were able to know that wish prior to. And I think you're right. So many people don't have that conversation because even though we know we're human and we know we're all going to transition eventually, we don't talk about it. We act like it won't happen to us or it's not real, and it will. And our
And
loved
we
ones.
didn't think, yeah, we didn't think it would happen to us. It was such a theory conversation. We would have never thought that would happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
And
everybody,
right, yeah. Or you think someday when I'm old in my bed, like you think it's going to be a certain way, or you push it out of your mind until you're faced to confront it. And
oh
um
yeah,
I also just want to note, I guess, before we dig deeper, that I really appreciated your language reframing. And I think that that's a really powerful way to speak about the people you love,
yeah.
that you haven't lost them. And I think that's something that when I think of losing your soulmate, your love, your husband, like that feels like such a deep loss to me. When I mean, I have my husband with me, and I think of that like it's such a terrifying thought, right? But to try to reframe that, I think even within myself, to, there is no lost love. Like it is a transition, and we can find ways to carry them with us and honor them in that. Like even that is such a powerful shift. So thank you for starting with that.
Oh, you're very welcome. I find it so important. And even, you often hear widows in particular, or people, I shouldn't even say just widows, people when they have experienced something like that, to use that language. There'll always be a hole in my heart. And I don't use that language because it feels so wrong. Like you couldn't live with a hole in your heart. And I always love saying there'll always be a space in my heart for Rob, because it will. And just feel the difference when you say those two things and try it out for yourself. Maybe that shifts something for you. Maybe that's a tiny little seed that you need to plant for your healing to grow. Mm.
Yeah, I love that too. A space in my heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that implies that there's like room still. Like there's room for so much when you're talking about space as opposed to maybe a designated amount, and then there's a hole carved through that will never be filled. It's almost like it's finite and a piece of it's gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and everything falls through. I don't want everything to fall through and be lost. I want those memories to stay in my heart and to carry them forward with me. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you experienced this moment where that conversation went from theory to reality, and now you're faced with what does life look like now? What happens then? How do you move from there to
Mhm.
here?
So, I think something within me went on autopilot that moment I heard of Rob's passing, and I literally went into functioning mode. I knew the first thing I had to do, it was so strong in my heart, I have to tell the boys first. And nothing prepares you for that. Nothing. And no matter how much time you have, there is nothing that prepares you for sharing a message that you simply cannot sugarcoat. So I literally had those 7 steps down from my bedroom into my living room, where they were sitting on the couch in their Hapkido uniform, waiting for me to take them to martial arts training. And I still remember this moment so vividly, this innocence about them, like, we're ready to go, mum. And they look at my face and I'm like, can you put your iPads down? And just the way I said it, usually you have to say it 5 times when you're a mum and they're on their iPads. They just put it down, and they were like, with those innocent eyes looking at me. And I just had to say that their dad just died. And oh, like even now, almost 7 years later, I can feel the heaviness of that moment and the vastness that it opened up for us. This completely I often talk about it, that Sarah Connor moment when she drives into the dark in the Terminator movie, like all lights switched off and the future unwritten. That's sort of, and I know that sounds very theatrical, but that's exactly what it felt like. This vastness in front of me, not knowing, no lights on, and not knowing what's going to happen. Yet that was the moment where this kicked in, Rob's voice, I want you to create the happiest life possible for the boys. And it was so, whoa, in that moment, billions of layers of emotions, and that voice comes in. And I just knew this is where I have to take them. And I can promise you, I had no idea how to, no idea how to, but it was step by step by step. And so, yeah, this is what we carried forward. We did all the tick boxes on a list. I packed them up when we had our moment, and I went to Rob's parents. I wanted to tell them in person. I rang the brother, the sister on the way. I rang my mom. She was about to fly out to Austria, from Austria to Australia, because my younger son had his first Holy Communion. So
Mm,
she was coming out for that. And what is the timing? Do you know what I mean?
mm,
So we flew across the country to identify Rob's body, which was also confronting, but also very bonding for us as a family. And I find it was a very, very necessary step for us to do this together. And a lot of people were like, why don't you leave the kids with the grandparents? Why don't you? I'm like, there's no way. Their dad just flew across the country and didn't make it home alive. And now I'm flying across the country and leave them behind. No way. I just knew we had to do this together. We were, from that moment onwards, we were like this close, we did everything together. Like we even slept in the same bed for months on end because we all just needed that safety, that closeness, yeah, the feeling safe. So we took through all of that. We arranged the celebration of life for Rob, which was really beautiful. It was all about really honoring and celebrating his life. There was even laughter and smiles in the audience when I shared about his life. And then after, we had this beautiful, I think there were about 500 people in a church, and then still 300 people that came to celebrate afterwards. And everywhere I looked in the room, it was so surreal walking into a room full of laughter at a funeral. I put that under big quotation marks because I call it a celebration of life. And that's exactly what it was. Everywhere you looked, people were sharing stories, were sharing fun moments about him. And I thought to myself, Rob would have loved this. It was really honoring who he was. And for me, when people talk about a funeral, I think of people focusing on the moment of their passing. And I don't like to reduce a life that was so bright and full of love and joy to the moment of their passing. I am a big believer on celebrating all of what they've achieved and who they were and the legacy and the imprint they left in our lives. So that's why I love calling it a celebration of life and focusing on their life instead. And that's exactly what we did. And then the same week of the funeral, celebration of life. See, now I'm saying funeral, and it's still so trained in your brain.
yeah.
Um, so the celebration of life was on Wednesday, and then on Sunday we had Jed's Holy Communion. And after that, I had a massive breakdown moment because all the tick list was done. I've done everything that needed to be done. And then there was the celebration for Jed, and that was hard. So all eyes were on us. The entire town knew. We live in a small country town. Everybody knew. And that was really hard to get to hold it together. Like there was tears coming and I was really trying to just be there for him, but it was so prominent, that absence of Rob and
Mm,
that feeling of he was supposed to be here. So that night I had a full-on breakdown, and I'm going to share this because it's really pivotal to my entire journey that was ahead. The boys were upstairs brushing their teeth and they started bickering over something, and I can't remember what it was, but I sort of called up a couple of times and completely went past them, and it went on fighting about, who can use the tap first, whatever, I don't know. And all of a sudden, something literally burst out of me. And I was like, boys, I just need peace and quiet. And I literally burst it out like that. And it was like a valve had opened and I couldn't close that valve anymore. As soon as I burst out, I just started yelling and then screaming and then primal screaming from the bottom of my lungs, basically. that sentence over and over again. I just need peace and quiet. I couldn't stop it anymore. It was like an out of body experience. And I literally collapsed on the kitchen floor and I was whacking kitchen cupboards and it just turned into
Mm.
pitch primal screaming after that. And then everything was quiet. And I literally remember as if I could watch myself from above and I could not stop myself from doing it. I watched myself fall apart, full on out of body experience. And I didn't even remember falling. But when I got out of it, I was on the kitchen floor and I was so empty. I had nothing left. I feel so emotional just sharing this right now. But I find it so important to share it because when people watch my story, they think everything was so glorious and oh, we decided we're gonna create a happy life and that's what she did and off she went. No, there was such depth behind all of that. There was such purpose and intention behind that decision. And also this moment of you have to pick yourself up, Marie. You have to walk upstairs and tell your boys what just happened. You have to have this conversation and you need help. That was that moment when I realized, I've been holding space for everybody else but myself, and I need help. And I had this conversation, and it was really one of the most important conversations I've ever had with my boys. And I really feel, as horrible as it was to experience that, it really planted a seed of you do need to learn to allow help in, no matter who you are, no matter how old you are, if you're 8 years old, if you're, you know, 45 that I was at that moment. I called someone the next day and saw her the next week. And I sat in her office and we started working together for about 4 months. And eventually I had this moment of sharing with her, everybody expects me to fall apart. Everybody's waiting for me to fall apart. Nobody understands why I'm actually choosing joy and love and happiness over sadness and grief, because all of that can go hand in hand. It's not one or the other.
Mm.
All of that goes hand in hand. And she looked at me and she said, what does grief mean to you, Marie? And to my own surprise, the first word that came up was empowerment. And I was like, whoa. So I did not see that coming. This is so bizarre. Empowerment. And then it made me think of that primal moment that I had. And I thought, imagine that power that you feel in the falling apart, in the primal screaming, in the depth and most painful moment of your life, to harness that to rebuild yourself.
Mm.
Oh, I have goosebumps just saying that. And that's basically exactly what happened in a nutshell. I said, I think I need to write a book about this. She said, I think you should. And so I did. And 5 months later, I published Loving Life After Loss. And to my own surprise, it ranked in the top 100 bestseller list of Australia. And I'm like, whoa, okay. I think I've got something the world needs. And based on that, and I'm going to wrap this up now because I went into way too much detail, but I find that detail so important in that story. So I created a movement with the same title. I've taken up roughly 5,000 people onto their healing journey in a scale of like 5 years. And I developed healing journeys, programs, retreats. I wrote my second book, Happy Healing, and my third one, which was my journal, prompted journal, Sparks of Joy. I love it. It's such a beautiful companion. And then I actually archived the movement 5 years later. I was done. I felt I held so much space that I needed the next step of my journey to be a lot less responsibility and a lot more impact. So this movement was huge and amazing and incredible. And it became my stepping stone into speaking and everything else I do today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. There's so many pieces I want to pull
Mm,
on with that story. So many moments of wisdom, but I think the first place I'll start is just thank you for sharing that
mm,
primal moment, that moment where the heaviness of it all hit, because that moment, that's like the moment I fear. That's the moment I imagine in my mind when I think of losing the people closest to me, when I think of them not being physically on this earth in the same way anymore. Like I think of that like deep, deep pain, like at a physical and soul level.
mm,
Like that is what I imagine. And so to know that you had that moment and that you like that something came over you, this primal grief, this primal power, this primal processing of everything that was going on, everything you were holding, and
Yeah.
like to be vulnerable and to share like this wasn't a perfect journey, like this hurt, like it hurt really bad, and like you needed to get support for yourself. And
Yeah.
even like the movement into your own healing journey and your therapy work and finding a moment where you could recognize what grief meant to you and writing a book from that. I mean, it seems like it all kind of happened quickly after
Yeah.
that. What did it feel like to be kind of like in that process from even the point of primal grief and loss of control to you're feeling
Having the
empowered
movement.
and yeah, and you're like you feel like you've got this power to rebuild.
Surreal is probably the one word to sums it all up because just to give you the timeline, Rob passed in June of 2018. I published a book in October. And then in November, I took the boys on a trip around the world for 2 months. I knew we had to get away from all these first milestones without Rob. I knew we needed a break from all this expectation and memories and feeling the lack of his physical presence to come through all these milestones like Christmas, New Year's, the boys' birthdays. So I wrapped them up and we went on a trip around the world, 2 months, just traveling 9 countries, I think. I can't remember exactly now, but it was an incredible choice to do that. And then I came back end of January. The boys started school back beginning of February. And in March, I started my global movement. And, and
Wow.
at the end of the year, so from March till the end of 2019, there were, so I remember mid-January 2020, we had 2,000 people in the group. So it grew like within under a year, we were up to 2,000 people. And over the course of the 5 years, there were approximately 5,000 people who came through that movement.
Wow.
It's incredible, absolutely incredible, really surreal. And I felt that I was only ever like a couple of steps ahead in my healing journey. So, people that came with me, it was incredible. And after 5 years, I had this moment of every time when somebody new comes into a group, I felt like stepping back further and further. The gaps became bigger
Mm,
and it became more exhausting. And when it started to feel exhausting, I knew I had to change something because you cannot lead and you cannot heal and you cannot help and hold space from a space of exhaustion.
mm,
So that's when I went inwards and sat with that decision of what comes next, what do I do? And that was a process in itself that I really enjoyed. I loved it. Took a weekend away all by myself, and the boys were with their grandparents at the time. And I said, I need to make a big decision. Can you have the boys? I just need to be. So for 3 days, that's all I did, to just be, not do anything, not be present in the group. I had my they called themselves the mod squad, my team of moderators in the group, which was beautiful. They looked after the group, and I just stepped away and just sat with that complete surrender. What's the next step? Show me. What am I supposed to do with this? And coming out of that, I knew that I had to step away, but I still didn't know exactly how and what and when I'm going to wrap it up. And then a friend of mine, Rodolfo, he runs shaman retreats. And there was one coming up literally a week after or 2 weeks after. And I went back to the grandparents like, I know you just had my kids for 3 days. Would you have them for another week? I really need to do this. I was on this journey of complete surrender and finding answers and directions and guidance. And I surely got that in a retreat. 1 week in complete sacred land, away from everything. Um, I did a whole lot of ancestral work there as well. Like all my ancestors came in to support me in this. It was very sacred, deeply spiritual, and I got everything. The date, how, when, who, like everything. It was lined up for me. And so I came back beginning of May. I told the group I would wrap up on the 12th of June because that was Rob's passing anniversary. So on his 5th anniversary of passing, I wrapped up the group and I archived it. So it was all there, the whole timeline, and it was incredible. And 4 days later, we flew to Europe for 5 weeks. So I'm like, how perfect was the timing? And that was already booked, so didn't have to worry about what to do while I was traveling. And it was this, again, a very similar moment to when we travel around the world. So just leave everything behind and just be.
Yeah, it sounds like there were these like really beautiful breaks between
Yeah.
the energy and the movement and the momentum. Like there was something that was carrying you, and like you said, like the world needs this, and people clearly were called and gravitated to that because we do need it, and we don't have a lot of spaces to teach us how to navigate grief. And so to be able to carry all of these people through for that amount of time, and then also to have the wisdom and the foresight to recognize when maybe it was no longer contributing to that mission that you had to create the most happy life for you and your family, that to live out Rob's wish to allow that for you guys. Yeah.
So true. Absolutely.
So how did your mission evolve from there? Like where yeah, what has unfolded and unveiled itself to you in the years since then, as more space has come and you've associated with these lessons in different ways?
Yeah. So there was one thing that I now, again, when you look back and you're like, oh, that's what a connection happened. Oh, this is why that happened. And excuse me. And that was the fact that I was booked to speak at Camp Widows up in Brisbane in August. So back to the timeline, closing the movement in June, going to Europe for 5 weeks. So end of July, we came back, and beginning of August, I was booked to speak. And a part of me was like, do I still do this? Do I pull? I'm like, no, it's already advertised, it's all there. And I actually love speaking, as you can tell. So I thought, no, I'm going to go up there and I'll do this. And I was chosen to speak about embracing anger. And it is such a deep topic. It is such a really vulnerable and important topic, especially in the space of grief. So nobody wanted to touch that topic of anger. And I said, I'll do it. Pick me. I love it. I love talking about it. It is so important and so nurturing when you get that right perspective. And I said, I'm going to do this. So in preparation, I said, is this going to be more speaking, more workshop style? How many people roughly? Just so I can prepare how I will present this. And they said, it's really hard to tell, Marie, because the widows are there. They can pick on a day. They've got different speakers to go to. Roughly, usually you get sometimes 15, sometimes 30. And I'm like, okay. I came into a room and he kept filling and he kept filling and he kept filling. And there were roughly about 100 people in the room. So that just goes to show how important the topic of anger is in grief, because people wanted to hear about it. And here was my next pivotal moment. I feel like I had so many pivotal moments in my life, to those stepping stones to get me to who I am and where I am today. And that was a really, really important one in terms of my future career, because I remember when I talked about this role reversal, I often say to people, when you don't know how to move forward or what the next step is, I do the role reversal. I'm like, what would Rob do? Or what would Love do? Whatever you prefer. For me, it's very interchangeable. And I put myself in Rob's shoes. And I often picture Rob when I try to visualize him, to connect with him, because I'm such a visual person. I often see him all in white, which was our wedding outfit, basically. We were both dressed in white linen, skipping along this endless beach because he was such an Aquarius. He loved the water, he loved fishing, spear fishing, diving, snorkeling, surfing, you name it. He was such an Aquarius. And I often picture him skipping on the beach. And as I'm telling this story, I'm skipping along the stage. And there was this moment of when I talked about what anger actually means and how I felt this wave of healing rippling through the room. And I had that reflection of people when they were lining up afterwards to all talk to me and share their story of anger with me, or share their story of epiphany that they had while listening to this story. And there was this moment of, this is what I need to do. That's my next step. I need to be on physical stages. I've been on so many virtual stages, and that I'm very used to and very comfortable with. And then I'm like, this is my next step up. I need to stand on stage. And, I even felt cheated when you said the TEDx talk. I'm going to do a quick sidestep because that was for me. I needed to prove to myself that was like I wanted that confrontation with a big audience, the stepping
Mm.
up, the claiming it, and then COVID hit and I had to do it virtual. And I'm like, no, I mean, I did my TEDx talk and like, I don't want to dim the light of TEDx about that. And it was beautiful. I'm glad I did it. Yet I didn't have that huge audio experience and my red dot to stand on, like all these things.
Yeah.
In that moment, I just knew that that will be my next step. I've done so much speaking, and I thought it's time for me to step up and claim that and really step into this space of doing that for a living and helping people through adversity and shifting their perspective, changing the language around it, and most importantly, allowing healing in.
Mm. Yeah, that movement from this virtual space that you had created to being physically with people, I can feel the power in that. I mean, you have such a powerful presence anyways. I mean, we're virtual now and I feel like you're right across from me, but I think magnify that. Imagine being in the room with you when you're sharing. Like the energy is just so palpable when you're in a physical space, right? So
Mm,
I can imagine how that transformation must have felt. But I want to circle back a second because you talked about anger, and this was something that really stood out to me from our first conversation was that you have this beautiful way of holding grief and speaking to it and bringing light and love and hope and healing into grief. And you don't ignore anger, which I think is so important and so essential. But I would love to hear how you integrate
mm,
this and how you frame
yeah,
and work with anger within this
yeah.
context. So I just will open it to you for a second.
Thank you so much. I really feel this is such a golden nugget in the space of grief that is so important. And once you get this, it is actually really simple, and I choose it very deliberately, to diffuse anger. It's not easy, but it's simple. So here is how it goes. For me, anger is a cover-up emotion. It is easier to express. And as I shared before, sometimes it comes out in rage and primal and it needs to burst. But for me, it's like a pressure cooker. When you don't open that valve, when you don't allow that to come out, then it will burst. It was literally um, so the first thing for me is always to look at what is actually triggering that anger. What is underneath? Is it sadness? Is it grief? Is it hurt? Is it frustration? Is it loneliness? Is it abandonment? Is it um, sometimes even literally losing the live the will to live. People are often in this complete space of despair. And for me, that is what needs to be seen, acknowledged, nurtured, held, healed. And once you address what actually triggers it, the anger literally dissolves. It doesn't need any attention anymore. Anger is just helping us to express something where we don't have words or emotions for. So it bursts out of us because it is so painful that we can't hold it anymore.
Mm.
And we allow that for us to hold that, what we feel we can't hold, and go to the bottom of it and do it one by one and bit by bit and do the work, ask for help, allow help in. I don't know what I would have done without Emily, my positive psychologist. She held space for me like a trooper. And I only worked with her for like 4 months. But because of my background, every session with her was like a fast forward. Like it was like, bring it on, bring it on. I was so open to her help. I wanted to heal through this. And it's not about speeding it up, but I knew what I needed. So it was a very fast process for me. So anyway, back to anger. When you really sit with what's underneath and allow that to come forth and to really sit with that gently, I I want to bring this out as a huge as an encouragement to put your attention onto that. When you go through grief, it almost always, or I actually dare say always, brings up wounds from your childhood or throughout your life that you haven't looked at. It's almost like it amplifies it or it brings it back, or, with that whole wave of emotion that comes out as well, however that picture is that you need for that. But it will trigger unhealed wounds from your childhood, and they're here to be seen. And you're in this space of, hey, I'm just grieving, and now you're bringing me that. This is too much. And that's where anger often comes in because you're in this overwhelm. And then
Mm.
you don't know how to express this emotion and you burst out. So, this is why I'm always saying it is so important you find the right help. Because a lot of people think they know how they can help you in this space. And it's often those who haven't experienced it and think they have an opinion of how you deal with that, not understanding at all what you're going through. So, find the right people. And I only just chatted to a psychologist yesterday, and we talked about the difference between learned and lived experience.
Mm.
And no matter if you can put your finger to it or not, but at least subconsciously you feel it. So, as bizarre as it sounds, find somebody who's actually experienced grief when you work with them, because there will be a difference. And I know a lot of people might want to spear me for that, but it's just, I really, for me, this is my personal opinion. Okay. So I'm not saying that's scientifically proved in any way, but my personal opinion is work with somebody who's experienced it, even though a lot of coaches or mentors might have a very different opinion about that. This is just my personal opinion.
I think that's incredibly valid, though. I mean, with any kind of transformation, I think when you work with someone who's stood in the place that you are, when you're at your lowest point, there's a different container of trust within that
Yeah.
relationship that allows for you to believe what they say and to be engaged in the process, right? In a different way than you would if you're like, this
Mm.
person doesn't get it. They've never been there. Like it's hard to accept even the wisest words from someone that you don't think has felt what you feel.
That's so beautiful how you said that. The container of trust, it is larger when somebody has experienced it because they've gone to the depth of it. So it really does make the container so much bigger. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And I just wanted to like I guess put a fine point on the way you relate to anger, which
Mm.
in my mind when I was hearing you talk about it, I thought of like a siren, like an alarm that like there's a storm coming or something is wrong, or like it's alerting us that there's this
Yeah.
deeper wound, like it's this signal, and it is very loud and abrupt and overwhelming, and it can feel like a lot. But if you listen to it as such, like as this signal that there's something that needs tending to, like that's how
Yeah.
you actually move through it.
Yeah. Exactly. I love that. I love your reflections.
It it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's just so powerful to hear the way that you've lived through this and worked through this. And I guess my next question around this anger is it's really nice to be able to speak to it and say nice things about it. But when people are in it, have you
Mm.
found anything to be particularly useful while you're
Mm.
in grief and in anger to help I guess cultivate the courage to go to those places that
Yeah.
maybe feel
Oh,
scary or hard or
so
inaccessible?
beautiful. Oh my goodness, it's so true. It's exactly that, the courage to go to these places. And because there's also a lot of fear delving into that emotion, it is really scary. It is really scary to be there. Like being in that moment of my meltdown was super scary for me. So I'm going to share something that's very, very new. And I freaking love this because my godfather said that to me only two days ago. And he said, courage only ever has to be an inch ahead of fear. And I'm like, goosebumps. Courage only ever has to be an inch ahead of fear. And I'm like, this is so beautiful. It is really beautiful. And to have the courage to go there and to sit with it, I really recommend that if it's too scary for you, then create something that makes you feel safe. And here are a couple of examples because some people need a person to sit with them and they have a person that they really, really trust that will go down that path with them. And that might be as in just somebody sitting there witnessing it and you telling them, do not interfere unless you really fear for my safety. Just do that. And screaming out. Scream it out, cry it out, like scream into a pillow if you must, or out into the forest. And I'm always worried about some people walking around thinking, "Oh my God, somebody's
Yeah,
getting
what's
murdered."
happening?
You know, it's like find a safe space, physically, emotionally, and mentally, where you can go down that path. And maybe that's sitting with a positive psychologist. And I always add the word positive because for me it's really important. Because there is a difference. I'm not going to go into that. You can Google it
Yeah.
because it's easier to find than wasting time here on that part. But positive psychology is for me always the first step that I would recommend. And you need to find what works for you. Really, if you walk into somebody's office and do this in a professional setting and your gut instinct is saying no, then listen to that. It is a no. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to understand it. You've got the right to walk away. I've had a lot of people that said to me, but I booked the 10 sessions, and I'm like, don't do that. Don't ever book 10 sessions. I had people literally, and it sounds very, I don't say that from an ego space. I had people literally throw money at me and say, I want to book 10 sessions with me. And I didn't take it. I said, no, let's sit in one session. And if you like it, I even credit that to the 10 sessions. And if you like it, then we can continue working with each other. I want you to experience it first. Ask for that experience. You've got the right to ask for this experience to work with someone, because if it doesn't work for you, what do you do with the 10 sessions then? Other than that, it's wasted money, or you're going down a path that doesn't feel right for you and maybe even takes you on a wrong path. So find somewhere, someone where you feel safe to go down that path and allow that depth to come up and scream it out, cry it out, journal it out, whatever your style is, but find something that gives you release. That's what you're looking for. If you don't feel that release, something's not right.
Mm. Yeah,
Mm.
I appreciate those examples, like these very tangible things, because sometimes I think when you're in the midst of the overwhelm, it can be hard to know like what to reach for. So
Yeah.
being able to say like these are some ways that this could look. And
Mm.
I do appreciate your emphasis on positive psychology too, because that is a very specific realm within the land of psychology, and it makes perfect sense with your journey that was this container that would have allowed for you to move through this
Yeah.
grief in a way that was healing and to cultivate love and life and light, because that's what positive psychology is all about. So that makes perfect sense, and I think that clarity is important too.
Oh, I love that you so highlight that. There's one thing that's just popped up. I'm going to make this super quick. We also got gifted a family bereavement session, which was incredible. And you wouldn't believe where it came from. Rob and I had a shaman wedding, a barefoot wedding, as I mentioned at the very beginning. And our celebrant called me a couple of weeks after Rob passed and said, Marie, I'm not sure if you know, because we stayed loosely in touch over the years. She said, I don't know if you know that I'm also a family bereavement counselor. And I said, no, I didn't know. And she said, look, I'm already retired, but I would love to gift you and your boys a family bereavement session if you're open to it and whenever you're ready. And I was like, yes, please. With like from the bottom of my heart, yes, please. And she came into our space, which was really sacred because for months and months, I did not feel like wanting anybody in my house. It became such a sacred space. It was really, really selective of who I allowed in. And she sat around our dining table with us, and I wasn't prepared for what was to come. I naively went into that, fully trusting my heart and trusting her because I knew who she was, to just say yes without thinking it through. And what came was the very first moment for me to hear my boys talk about the story and not me.
Mm.
Naturally, me being the adult, I was always the one who was asked about the story. And all of a sudden, I sat and she held space and I listened to my boys share the story. It was so deeply emotional. I was not ready for that. And yet, it was the biggest gift I could have ever received in that journey. It was incredible. So, That is something that through her support I offer too these days, which I love. She has taught me that. She had held space for me to learn how to do that. And when I did my very first family bereavement session, it was such a gift seeing how I can now, share that with others and hold space for others. And it's incredible work. So I'm throwing it in as another example. Find what works for you and pay attention to those around you who might not have that voice no matter what age they are.
Mm. That
Mm,
that sounds like such a powerful and bonding experience to just have a
yeah.
shared space to be with each other in that and I mean you're going through the motions, you're living the grief, but to have a again a container, right, where it's like this is the intention, the sole intention of this time to be with each other in this on purpose. That just feels so sacred.
The sole intention.
Mm,
I
yeah,
love that.
yeah. Oh. Okay, so I know that we're getting close on time, but I'm going to ask one more question and it might not have a short answer, and that's okay.
I'll try my
Because
best.
I just feel like we've gone so many places and I want more.
Yeah. I did
So
not expect this. I love where we went.
yeah, this has been so
Mm,
powerful. Um, so this vision that you have around changing the narrative, changing the language, changing the way we think about and relate to grief so that
mm,
we truly can live in lightness and in love. We've talked
yeah.
about some of the early stages. Can you give us some inspiration, some hope, some tidbits about what this looks like as you move through it and how you can cultivate that
Mm,
lightness and that life and really
yeah.
that honoring as you move forward?
Thank you so much. I love that question. I feel that for me, it always comes back to love just wants you to be happy. Like when you navigate through grief, at first the waves feel so high that you feel like you're going to drown, and living in Australia, like I didn't grow up around the beach. I grew up in Austria. I moved here when I was in my 30s. So not growing up around the beach, not knowing how to read the waves. That is such a perfect analogy because you don't know where to go in. It seems quite calm, and then all of a sudden the reef, like it just takes you out. And um, it is really important to learn because the first thing they teach you is when you are caught in a reef to turn on your back and try to just float and go with the flow, and it will eventually, hopefully, spit you out somewhere else at the beach, not always, but get out of that immediate danger basically and don't try to swim against it. And that's the perfect analogy for me for grief. There's so many analogies with grief and ocean because sometimes the waves seem a lot bigger than they are, and other times it looks way too calm and then it rips you out. So you never know what you get because the ocean is so vast that you don't see to the bottom of it. And that's the same thing with grief. Learn to take those breaks, learn to know when the storm hits to turn on your back and float, or to take that ring that somebody throws you off a boat to save you. Allow yourself to hold on to that. Find somewhere safe to go, find that island, find the floor underneath your feet where you can stand again. And sometimes we're in this and trying to swim, and then all of a sudden you stand up. I'm like, oh, the water's only up to here. It's those sort of perspectives where we often need somebody to bring this different perspective in. And when you're in these early stages, I really urge you to find support, allow it in, and trust your heart and that inner voice when the support doesn't feel right. And that happens a lot in grief. It happens a lot. People have got so many different opinions, including myself. My opinion might not work for you at all. Then please don't take it. I mean that with the most sincerity and most love in my heart when I say that my support might not be the right thing for you. So trust that inner voice and allow yourself the breaks. You don't need to function, you don't need to do anything but take care of yourself and those who you are responsible for. And here's one for the moms. I'm going to wrap it up with that. So many moms come to me and said, "Well, I have to do this for my kids. I have to keep going. I don't have to. I have a choice." We didn't talk about choices a lot today, but I do want to throw it in at the end here. Everybody's got a choice. in every single moment. And people often say to me, well, I didn't choose for my husband to die. And in my head, I'm always thinking, well, on a soul level, I believe we've chosen that. I feel that Rob and I had a soul contract where we chose exactly that. But that aside, and honoring that everybody's got different spiritual beliefs, you can still choose how you respond to it. So, what do you do with that now? That's your choice right there, right now. And when I hear a mom say, but I have to do this for my kids, and I'm like, well, do you? I know moms that don't do it, that do stay in bed, or they fall into alcoholism, drugs, antidepressants. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying there is a lot of numbing, walking away, and unfortunately, sometimes even suicide.
Mm.
So the fact that you are getting out of your bed tells me that something inside of you has chosen to step up, has chosen to be there for your kids, has chosen to stand up, get out of bed, stand up, make breakfast, and send them off to school. And then you might collapse afterwards on the couch, and that's okay too. But there is a choice in that, and I want you to honor that. I want you to see that in yourself. I want you to honor that you have chosen to be there for your kids. It's not a have to, it's not a got to. It's my favorite reframe. It's a get to.
Mm.
Not got to, I get to. I get to look after my kids. And that in itself is a blessing because it means I'm alive, I'm here, and my life matters. So let's celebrate that.
Mm. There's so much there. I think it sounds like these first steps to cultivating some hope and some healing and some light is first like a deep and caring gentleness with yourselves and giving permission for those spaces, those moments of whatever you need and of maybe not fighting so hard,
Mhm.
giving yourself permission to reach out for the life preserver, for the person who's got the handout, and then also like from there empowerment of owning your life choices and that we do always have a choice in each moment we make a choice and then
Yeah,
we don't have to judge right or wrong, but I think just recognizing that we have some power, it puts us back into this space of creativity and authoring in our lives.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Ugh. Is there anything that we didn't get to that you hoped we would that you want to share?
I think we covered a lot today, a lot
We
more than I
did.
ever thought. I love, yeah, I'm quite happy to, yeah, just send out love to everyone. That's trust your heart. What would love do? That's my favorite. If you're ever at the point where you don't know where to go next, what would love do?
Mhm. Yeah, I
Mm.
love that. Love
Mm.
is I love love. That's like my guiding light. So I'll definitely be
You.
integrating that into my practice. Where can people find you if they want to stay connected, if they're feeling inspired, if they want to work with you or follow you or just be informed of your work? How can they connect?
I'm on all socials basically, but I think the easiest is to just go to my website because you will find the links everywhere, and that's mariealessi.com. So there's even a button where you can book a chat with me, and it's really me who answers that. So yeah.
Perfect. Ugh, I love that. And that link will be in the notes so everyone can find it really easily and yeah, and stay in contact. This has been so deeply powerful and healing. And I think I don't know. It's touched me at levels I wasn't even expecting. And I was so excited to reconnect with you. I was so inspired after our first conversation. I was talking to my mom earlier today and I was like, I'm going to be speaking to this amazing woman later. But
Oh, you want
I
a hug from me?
I just still wasn't prepared, I don't think, for the emotional depth that I experienced. I mean, I've been at tears multiple points. I felt full body goosebumps. Like this has just been so deep, and I know it's going to be such a gift. So for everyone who's listening, I hope that you've been nourished by this and that you can integrate it and that you can find some space for healing and self-love and gentleness within your journey wherever you're at.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really honor the space that you hold so beautifully. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been such a joy, such a pleasure. For everyone who's listening, we will talk soon and take care of yourselves. Bye.
Bye for now.
Thank you for listening.
If this episode spoke to you, please take a moment to follow, rate, and share it with someone who might need it. If you're looking for more tools to help you thrive in your life, or if you're curious about working with me, please visit my website at internallyguidedleadership.com. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok at Internally Guided Coach. Be gentle with yourself out there, and I'll talk to you next time.